Hello and welcome to the podcast where we explore the process of audio narrative development by talking to people who are actively involved in producing amazing audio stories, whether that's through linear narrative or through actual play experiences. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Josh Burgess, the man in jumpsuit. Josh, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, great. So as mentioned, I am Josh Burgess. I do run Man in Jumpsuit. Previously was a partner in Gas Station Drugs, producer of shows Wireland Ranch and What's in the Rift, and a forthcoming project, hopefully released sometime in 2025 called The Dope Show. Man in Jumpsuit is my solo endeavor, and I am producing a show called Heartglass from Man in Jumpsuit. I've been doing audio fiction podcasting and actual play podcasting for a little over 3 years now. Long history of writing before that, but had kind of abandoned that dream when I was much younger to go into software development. Long background in software.
I know a song about that.
Yeah. So
my thing was I was always going to do board games, and then I realized there was no way of making any money.
Right.
And then as I joined the video games industry, this thing called Kickstarter happened, and my nephew worked on a game called Dark Souls, which famously made millions.
Yeah.
No, it's not as clean a story as that, as I know, but I'm not going to go into that. We are here to talk about you and how you got into this. So were you primarily involved in this because you started as a writer, because you were playing? What got you involved?
It's kind of funny, the story on how I ended up in podcasting. Excuse me as I fiddle with my microphone, the one thing you should not be doing during an interview. I vehemently did not want to podcast. When the idea was brought up by a group that I was playing a role-playing game with, that, hey, maybe we should have a podcast and, maybe we'll make some money from this, which first off, I knew there is no money in podcasting, save for the select few.
Very lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is a full-time job. I had no illusions from that. My wife is a somewhat of a fashion influencer in that sense. I knew all the work that goes into podcasting, and it's not something that you just throw up and hope for the best if you want to see any kind of success. So I strongly dissuaded them from doing it. I was firmly in the camp that this was a bad idea. However, once everything was recorded and sat out there and the person who was supposed to be editing didn't edit, I was like, well, maybe I can give a shot editing it. Maybe. And the next thing I know,
you got to suck it into it.
Yeah. Yep. And next thing I know, I was producing my first podcast. And then it became my second podcast, and then my third podcast, and then my fourth, and it just kept snowballing from there.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I've always, because I kind of always been that person who wants to do the next thing. So I've always been able to do little bits. I learned how to use, Premiere very, very early on. I learned how to use Photoshop, but I'm terrible at them. I should always be getting other people to do these things. Got lucky, my son decided to do filmmaking, so he's now my editor, thank goodness.
Right. Learn to exploit your resources.
Well, exactly. So you kind of you're like the reluctant podcast producer.
Right.
And this, you're saying it's about three so years ago that this was.
Yeah,
this
it was the
thing?
end of 2022 that I first started getting into this. Yeah.
So we'd just come out of COVID. Everybody who was going to do a podcast, because everybody did a podcast during COVID, has decided that they've either given up on it. And this is the point. This peak podcast era is the point you decide to move into this space.
Again, wasn't my decision. I feel like it was thrust upon me more than anything else.
Thrust upon you.
Yes, but there was no regard for timing. I wasn't even paying attention to the landscape of podcasting at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what an audio drama was back then. I had been familiar. I'd listened to a few APs like Glass Cannon, and my goal was originally just to put out an AP, and maybe it would be fun, but I never had any real intentions of it. So what happened and how it ended up becoming a bigger thing, and all of a sudden there was a lot more stress on doing this the right way, is that my first podcast fell through because I didn't know the people that I was making it with well enough. And that can be a problem because they had some very problematic viewpoints on certain things that came to light as we got closer and closer to release date. I ended up having to scrap it after the initial 3 episodes, and I wiped it completely because I just did not want that associated with my name at all when all was said and done.
I think this is a real issue that I think is quite often misunderstood, because people have views, fine, no issue at all. I have my views, and I'm lucky that my cast is mostly friends of mine, but I've invited a lot of people to try and play with them because I'm interested in having lots of people who don't look like me and don't think like me play a game where I try to put them in situations that are difficult. But with that comes a kind of level of is it responsibility? Is it, I don't know. What do you think? What's the?
I do think you have an accountability for the types of people that you platform, and so you have to be very conscious of their viewpoints and their personas to because you are responsible for platforming like your cast and your cast members.
Yeah.
If there are regressive or otherwise harmful viewpoints that you don't personally align with, like it is your responsibility, and that's why I completely nuked the show. Only 3 episodes into it, because I found out that they had some pretty regressive views on like LGBT issues.
Yeah.
And other things that I did not want associated with my personal brand.
Yeah. And I think that's I feel for you in that, particularly because I'm thinking about this from the point of view of, you look at the number of shows out there that have had late in the day incidents where a particular cast member has taken a particular stance that is misaligned with the rest of the cast, thing one, but also misaligned with the audience. And I know this is an extreme example, but the current arguments going on around the new TV show around Harry Potter is a very clear example of that. And a lot of people are really disappointed in the actors choosing to take up those roles.
Yep.
For me, this is personal. I have friends and family deeply affected by those views.
Exactly.
And that matters to me. But I'd like to think I've got enough empathy with the actors to understand the challenge. And I think it's also a difficult one, particularly because you're often dealing with an audience that didn't have the opinions of the author.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you think about that, because that does that play a part in the way you think?
Yes. When you don't have control, like media exists, death of the author, this is a well-studied topic and discussed topic in how we interact with media versus the people that created it. And we interact with a lot of media from writers that have since passed that had some pretty regressive viewpoints on things. The difference being that J.K. Rowling in particular is alive and is capable of learning and is choosing not to.
Well, worse than that, she's putting... I mean, this is, again, if you have different opinions, I'm not trying to put you off, I'm just trying to express mine. I feel very offended that she put a huge amount of money into a very rich person, but a huge amount of money, created a circumstance which have set up a situation in the UK that's made a lot of people more vulnerable and made no one else safer.
Yeah, yes. And I wholeheartly agree with you there that it's an already vulnerable community, and it feels almost like predation, the way that they approach it. So I cannot personally stand behind that. The reason that I got rid of the show was because, unlike people interacting with a piece of media that is external to them, I did have control over the levers on this one, and it was a pretty easy decision.
And like I say, I'm not trying to make this a political conversation. I would love to. That's another conversation we should have, definitely.
We might want to avoid that minefield, but yeah.
But because of the purpose of this particular one, we're talking about narrative. I think it's what you've highlighted here is a really interesting question about what you say as your podcast, your Twitch stream, your narrative story, about setting some parameters about what you are about. And sometimes what you're about isn't just the story. I think there's an emotional value, emotional kind of content that you're also conveying in the way that you cast, in the way that you engage, in the way that you communicate. And it sounds like that's an important factor to you as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I hate the normalization of like the white male experience, but I very much have the white male experience as well, and I think that that's like
Yeah.
especially given the privilege that I have in that position. It's important for me to not only first listen and understand the viewpoints of people that do not have that that default nature to their very existence, and secondly to make sure that I'm extremely mindful and centering stories which may not be my own from creators and other people that can tell that story effectively, because we don't grow or get better as people without diverse stories to guide us.
Yeah. But the stories become dull. I mean, I say this in game development as well. It's like, I don't make a better game because I have lots of people like me. I don't want anyone else in the room.
Right.
I mean, not entirely true, but I'm exaggerating for effect. But it's not having another person like me in a room is not going to make the story better.
Right, exactly. Right. There's only so many.
Because I've got those views.
Right.
I know what that view is.
We all approach things from a unique background, and just like we're not defined solely by our physical characteristics, right?
Exactly.
But there are experiential things that come with those physical characteristics that I will never be able to tap myself.
No.
And so a big part of my writing process, especially for this new season, was the very first person that I went out and hired was someone that could not only do sensitivity reading for me, but also help me tell an effective story about somebody with a different experience than I had. And that's something that I do very much feel is an important element, and one that audio drama does really well right now, maybe better than any other source of media, is embracing differing viewpoints and different stories than what you can usually access through traditional media.
Whilst you're here, don't forget to check out our actual play, The Anything Could Happen Show, on YouTube and all good podcast sites, where I put my guest players through no-win scenarios with limited information and always against the clock. And of course, where anything could happen.
Otto, how are you doing?
I just want to go home.
I understand
I just
that.
want to go home. We're not going home, are we? We're not going home. Why are we not going home? I want to go home.
Otto, get it together, my friend. Come on. We can't do a damn thing right now anyway. How do we get home?
I don't know. There was a ship coming to get us. What if it's destroyed that and we can't go?
Yes, that's a consideration. But for now, all we can try to do is control what we have in front of us. Right?
The problem I have is trying to make sure people who don't, you clearly get it, but a lot of people who don't get it will think that we're just trying to, the phrase DEI has become a banner, but it's missing the point, I think. I think the bottom line is that I think it's much more interesting for somebody who has again, I don't want to use the word lived experience because it's become a bit cliche in its own right,
Sure.
but who has an actual experience of different economic states, of different access to education, of different cultural context. I happen to not be religious, but I don't think I find it more interesting stories if I exclude people who have religious perspectives.
Yeah.
I might end up arguing with them because I'm a radical atheist, but that's not because I don't respect them.
Right,
It's
right,
because I think it's interesting and I want to have an interesting conversation. But again, maybe this is I don't think everybody has to have that mindset. But I do think that it's healthy to at least recognize, like you use the word privilege, recognize where you are and the shadow that casts.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you put that. The shadow that it casts is a perfect descriptor. It's one of those things, Oscar, where like it's not a zero-sum game. Storytelling and narrative is richer the more voices that tell it. And every story grows through the telling. And I think that the weird reactionary exclusion of certain people based on a perceived like centering is so such an odd stance to take for a group that's been centered for all of our lives at the very least.
Well, exactly. Well, it's the false equivalent stuff that I have the biggest frustration with, where particularly in the news, where you have to have an opposing voice. And what we've ended up with is giving somebody who has a non-factual view
Right.
the same airtime as somebody with a factual view.
Right. Well, I mean,
That makes
even
no
worse
sense to
over
me.
on this side of the pond is
Well, yeah.
we get the
How's
non-factuals
LA at
almost
the moment?
exclusively. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I use the LA reference there because at the time of recording, and this may be released quite some time afterwards,
Sure.
obviously there's a whole bunch of activity going on. However, I also have people informing me that there isn't as much activity as being portrayed in certain places.
Now we've gotten almost fully political, but this is something
Yeah.
that is very concerning to me personally.
Yeah,
I am
bet.
not quiet about my viewpoints, and the administration in the United States has been very vocal about putting down those with opposing viewpoints. And there are things that are happening now in America that I've not seen in my life in the 40 years that I've
Yeah.
been here. And
Great.
I would say that it's a scary time to not be full-throated fascist supporting, lover of autocracy. And
Exactly. And I feel like I probably spent about 2% of my life in America.
yeah,
And I'm not living in, I'm talking about like 2 weeks, 1 week at a time,
Sure.
over many, 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 many years. And if you think about that context, it's interesting how much I've seen the difference. For example, I used to love going to San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And now I don't. I chose not to go this year. Anyway, we are getting very much in the political scape of things, and that's not well. But I think what it does do is we've said there is a challenge right now about storytelling,
Right.
And I think this is actually a point where storytelling really thrives, and the ability to be able to tell different stories, to be able to explore stories. Now, you're doing both traditional storytelling and you're doing actual plays.
historically.
We should get into how you got there,
Yeah.
as in you fell into it, but also what are you trying to achieve? I mean, I've got a bit political in kind of the way we approach it because of the current things that are going on.
Absolutely, understandably.
Does that come in your design, your thinking, the kind of stories you want to tell?
Yeah, I don't know how familiar you are with like Wireland Ranch, which was a show that I produced prior to this.
I'm not, but
okay.
carry on. Yeah.
Politics, if we want to call it that, or just the general state of suffering of people, is a central point of a lot of the art that I've helped produce over the past few years. Wireland Ranch, which is the creation of Joseph Rutledge, I came on about 5 episodes into that, and we formed a company around it. Is an inherently political and very much takes a I don't want to say nihilistic because it also lampoons nihilism. It's very much a piece of work that is informed and driven by the experience of being, poor in America. And that's something, it takes a very like raw look at that through the lens of like a cosmic horror, where the cosmic horror is the capitalist, like the embodiment of the capitalist machine. And that is like,
I'm going to get tied up to it now.
well, yeah, it's a very, like, it's an impactful piece of art. And I would highly recommend anyone that might have those political leanings, listen to it. Joseph's a sound wizard. I absolutely love the guy. But yeah, the new show that I'm making is a little bit less overtly political, but it is very much informed by those same systems from which we like derive meaning. And for a lot of people, that is the political stance that they take, where they see them, because a lot of politics is just understanding where you fit into a world, right?
Yeah.
And what your viewpoint of that world is. And so Heartglass is first and foremost a story about meaning. And that meaning embodied the stories that we tell about ourselves, being a major driving force behind the narrative in this show. I do think, as previously stated, that narrative fuels everything to a certain extent, and understanding narrative's importance in how we frame our worldview and how we frame our understanding of ourselves is something that doesn't get talked about enough, because we do, like, the stories that we culturally accept and the stories that we individually perpetrate about ourselves are very core to who we are, to how we understand ourselves. So I don't know. I don't want to get like too up my own butt talking about that, but
this is absolutely the case. I think every art form has something where the artist has something to say, and you know, it sounds weighty and terrible, particularly with my accent, to use the word artist. Everyone assumes that we must be clever because we speak the proper British accent.
Sure.
It's not like that. The reality is, though, I think that any form of creative process is a form of art.
Sure.
I think game design is a form of art.
Absolutely.
I think writing is a form of art. There's nothing wrong with it being a form of art. All that is, to me, is a way of getting across a viewpoint, of having something to say. And you're going to want to have material behind the things you want to say. Otherwise, the recipient of that information, that vehicle, that art form, won't have anything to hear.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the interpretation of us of like saying artist as being haughty or something like that is in itself a story that we kind of tell ourselves about what is culturally acceptable to claim for oneself, right? And so that's one of those things, like, it's not just like the stories, like you wearing your cap at a jaunty angle is telling me a story about you, right?
100%.
And
intentional.
that is an expression in a story that you are putting out into the world just through small choices that you make. And
actually, the whole thing is deeply thought through. Because I was spent 10 years as an evangelist for technology companies like NVIDIA and Unity and places like that. And I was stood on stage doing talks about game development. And I'm using my classic BBC accent.
Sure.
I have a top hat on. I've usually got a jacket on, and I've got some sort of gamer-related or adjacent T-shirt. And so what I'm actually saying is, this is the short top hat. It's called a junior topper. Okay. It's the working class top hat. But you wouldn't know that. Nobody would know that. Only I know that. But I know that, and it's part of the identity I'm portraying. It's part of the brand I'm portraying.
Exactly.
And those little moments don't have to be communicated because they're there.
And so many of them happen subtextually. Like they're not things that we even are conscious of perceiving, but they are things that inform our understanding of the world. And that's really like what I'm trying to do with my storytelling is writing that large. Is a lot of what drives my narrative is really understanding how we approach understanding and meaning through fiction. And I think what better medium than stories to talk about stories, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your process, because I've talked to a lot of actual players, inevitably. I haven't had as much time to talk to audio drama folks yet, although there's more of them lined up shortly.
Great.
I'd be interested to get your kind of take on the physical process and the differences for you between those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the nicest things about doing actual plays is it forces you to seed some of the narrative. And I think that is a beautiful process. Collaborative storytelling is one of my favorite things in the world. Because there's nothing that feels quite so like generative or like restorative of like discovering a story as you're telling it. And that's a great feeling. It's something that will always keep it near and dear to my heart. And it's what really got me into tabletop role playing in the first place. I didn't even get into this until I was well into my 30s. And I discovered a love for it, not because like the dice, the math, all that's fun. I've got a whole collection behind me. Like I'm very much into the accoutrements, but what I discovered very quickly that I loved about it as I moved over from being just a player into like actually GMing things, is that setting up a world and allowing people to craft their own stories in that world is an incredibly rewarding experience.
Yeah.
And part of what, like, Heartglass was inspired, at least in part, by an aborted second campaign of What's in the Rift, our actual play podcast. It was the initial inspiration was the world that I'd set up. I just took it and built a story around it. And so, like, the main differences between these is, and I think this is something that everyone that writes straight fiction does, is you develop an affinity or almost a voice for a character in your head that is distinct from your own. One that exists almost external to you, that you can kind of ask questions to or put in a situation. And it's almost like you're being written through as you're writing that character. With audio fiction in particular, it's a lot of dialogue, so it's a lot of speaking through kind of thing. So,
I mean, for me, it was the moment when I'm an amateur. I'm not whatever, but it was the moment when the characters did something I didn't expect,
yeah,
and I'm the one writing the darn thing.
right. Yeah, no, it's 100% part of it.
Yeah. So, practically, we're talking about you've got this idea. It's derived from the actual play that you've done. You're starting to. Are you sketching it out? Are you drawing a kind of like? Are you writing out a story arc straight away, or are you starting with sections, or are you writing scripts straight away? I mean, how are you physically doing that?
I did a lot of short story writing before I fell into software development, all through high school, college, all my formative years. And then, similar to you, abandoned it because there's no money in writing.
Yeah.
My process has been the same since I was about like 16 years old. It's been revised, but it starts the same way. I will start and I will write a first scene, and I will, from that first scene, start extrapolating details of that world. And then once I have the details of that world, I will figure out the shape of the story that I want to tell. It's one of those things. Vonnegut has great talk about, like, the shape of stories. It's one of the things that I first approach is, like, what kind of general arc do I want this story to follow? And it doesn't always end up falling that way. The most recent piece that I wrote didn't end up the exact same way. It ended on a much higher note than I initially anticipated it to. Okay. But you'll find, I think, once you get into that, like, flow state of writing, you find that the story takes on a life of its own. And so while you can do your best to set up guardrails, you can never put it on a railroad track. And that's one of those things that a lot of folks, when they're first approaching it, they're like, oh, well, I just don't even know how I would start writing. And the key is you just start. And that's really the only secret there is to it. You're going to almost discover the story. There's a quote whose attribution I'm going to forget, talking about how you sculpt. And you don't sculpt by setting, like, a plan in forth. You might have a rough idea of what you're doing, but you have to work with the material that the medium on which you're sculpting. And sometimes you'll find that it doesn't want to do the thing that you originally wanted to do. And part of it is discovering what works in the medium that you're working in. And that's
I forgot who that was, but it was one of the turtles. One of the Italian artists that was saying that the sculpture exists already.
You're just uncovering it. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know. It's true of pretty much anything that's conveying meaning. In my opinion, it may be a little bit abstract or haughty to say something like that, but I don't think it's untrue. Any way that we convey meaning kind of naturally finds its, like, state of balance. It's zero energy state and settles in there. And that's, I think that maybe more so in any kind of, like, direct fiction that can be very true.
No, totally. And, I think, like Michelangelo, which I think is the one that was attributed to, but I don't know that.
Okay.
There's something about that discovery of the thing that's already there that I think even in an actual play also happens. It's just I think there's something. So when I did Amdram type stuff, one of the things I loved was devising a story where you have small scenes. The director has kind of some direction they want to go, but the work comes out of the interaction of the characters in the scene, and then that becomes a script.
Yeah.
And I think there's, and I've said this before, I think there's a spectrum between the kind of hard scripted processes where you've got an author writing something which is then essentially adapted for an audio drama. You've got the things that are written as scripts specifically for an audio drama. I think you've got the devised processes. Then I think you've got the more formal actual plays. And then you've got the kind of pure improv kind of moments. And I think every part of that process, everyone who does at any stage of those process can learn from.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it benefits you even if you've chosen a more rote approach to your process, to incorporate elements of discovery into that. One of the big things that I did when we were recording our sessions was inform everybody again that the script is not verbatim what I want you to say. It's outlining the shape of the story that I want told. But if you feel your character would say something in a different way, I want to give you the freedom to do that. And there are some takes that we had where what was written on the page was never a take that I received. And part of that is being okay with it. Understanding that the story will find its natural place to settle. And that it's not just the words on the page that inform that, but the actors that you choose for the roles and the times and places that you choose to record. All of these are factors which factor into your storytelling, and it doesn't end with the last word written on the page.
No. But also I'm wondering about, are you recording in person, individually, together? How are you doing it?
So we did our first episode asynchronously. I did a couple live sessions with folks that were more traditional television actors than they were radio actors, because it's a very common thing in the audio drama community to do asynchronous recordings and then kind of patchwork together a story. Every session passed, every episode passed the first. For every major character, that was a session that we did not in person, but synchronously online through, I think we used Clean Feed as our private and Source Connect to a certain extent. But we had our own issues with that. But the point being that that interaction between the characters, I felt was important to capture in the performance, because there, again, are moments of discovery in people telling a story, even if they're acting out what's in the page, right?
And are you taking multiple takes, or are you trying to do it
if necessary? I think sometimes there were a few scenes where we nailed them without any notes. And I think when you're in the process of recording, when you've got something that's good. Sometimes you may discover something that you thought was not so great. It turns out to be great on later listens. But when you get a take that really hits the mark, you can feel it in the moment.
You get chills.
Yeah, exactly. And I got plenty of those while we were recording this, so I'm very happy. We did not do a whole bunch of takes, is what I was getting at.
It's interesting because I suspect you tell me, but sometimes I find that material I've written, I'm too close to.
Mm-hmm.
And I worry that I don't push hard enough to do something different with it.
Yeah.
Is that an issue you've faced, or do you think it's not particularly a problem for you?
So I think that there are two different ways to approach this. Part of it, having run tabletop games for such a long time, I've gotten used to ceding a lot of control in the direction that things go and being a little bit more reactive and exploring different takes. So I don't know if I'm super tied to owning that, but I definitely see the value in allowing somebody else to put their spin on your work too. And I would not begrudge anyone who hired directors or other folks to help bring that vision to life, because not everyone has the full skill set, and that shouldn't preclude you from being able to tell your stories. And sometimes you just want to divorce yourself from that process of creation, because we do tend to get too precious about things that we create. So
I'm very much. I also know that I'm that ADHD boy that will want to fill any air time. I want to fill the noise. Fill the silence with noise. So we've got the recordings, hopefully as few takes as possible, but we've got our package material. We're going to turn that into a product. What's the sort of tools and structures that you're using to do that?
Well, of turning that into a product. If you're talking about my tool chain for developing audio dramas, we could be here for another couple hours.
Oh, a vague map
Yeah,
of the
so-
direction of flow. Yeah.
I did initially engage with an editor to chop down our live sessions, mainly because I hate doing like long chop.
Yeah.
I read an AP long enough that like my days of chopping down live audio, it feels like my time is better spent elsewhere. But I ended up
tagging it correctly is to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I spent upfront on actors, and I didn't have to massage timing near as much as I would with maybe a more untrained cast. But there's obviously still always some massaging involved. I mainly just wanted takes cut out originally, but I ended up doing most of that myself anyhow. I do almost everything in Reaper. I used to use, you mentioned Premiere Pro earlier. I used to use Audition. I've been burned one too many times by Audition to continue using it.
So I've switched to DaVinci.
Yeah.
Because we do all our stuff in video.
Right.
And then I get an audio output as well.
Right.
But that was the approach I decided to take.
Premiere is a better piece of software than Audition is. I will say that.
Audition's not my favorite.
No, it's not great. But it's what I started in because I was familiar with Adobe tools and it had everything that I needed to do what I thought at the time. It's just, it suffered a lot of instability. Neither here nor there. I use Reaper primarily right now, because it's got great customization and allows me to do things that Audition didn't, like copy automation from one track to another or have very involved sends across multiple channels and all these things that just were not present in other softwares. Once cutting that down, I also do the sound design myself because like you, I am very ADHD as well. And I will obsess and get to the bottom of how to do everything exactly the way that I think, it should be. I've dove really heavily into understanding how to do mixing and mastering as well. And I'm even composing the music for this show as well.
Oh, wow.
So like
I have no knowledge of audio design of music. I'm not in any way, shape or form suitable for that. But I admire people who can do it.
Right. But it all falls back into that. This realization came to me actually once I started podcasting, that the way that we tell a story isn't just, again, the words on the page. So all these things factor into it, like the music that hits at a certain time, all that. And I would love to give it off to give it to other people. In fact, I initially tried with a Kickstarter that did not succeed. I wanted to hire a composer. I wanted to hire a sound designer. I wanted to hire mixing and mastering. But what I've discovered in doing this is that I've always kind of ceded some portion of my own narrative over to other people. And this is really the first time where the only people that had their sway on things was the actors. And it's been great so far. I've really enjoyed controlling every aspect of this.
So you've got sound design, you're making your own music, you're compiling it all, and then you're going to get it out to an audience. I mean, this current one you haven't yet, but you're presumably preparing to do that.
Yes.
What tools are you using? Are you using classic kind of podcasting, the kind of megaphones or the Spotify for creators? Are you using YouTube, TikTok?
All of those, I think you have to. If you're trying to get, like, why would you close yourself off from different avenues for people to interact with your work? It can be very frustrating at times, especially in audio first medium, trying to translate that into video media. But Fortunately, I do have experience doing video editing and all that as well.
Great.
So that's at least a little bit easier for me. I've done a few like video pieces for this, a lot of audiograms, a lot of like longer form video trailers for the project.
Yeah.
I have visual media to go along with the episodes, along with transcripts that get uploaded to YouTube for every episode. And then I also like engage on different platforms. Instagram has been a big one for Heartglass so far, as well as TikTok and all that too.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I very late in the game into Instagram. I was kind of put off by Instagram because of its negative impact on particularly women generally, and I wasn't really taking photos constantly.
Yeah.
Which was obviously, for those who were old enough, will remember that's where it kind of started. It was literally called Instagram for that reason.
Right.
But I was very much, when it was still Twitter, I was very much more of a broadcast kind of thing. And of course, with my evangelism, LinkedIn for me is massive. I know it's not for a lot of people, but when you're connecting in a particular trade, it's really handy. So I might have I've like 12,000 or so connections on LinkedIn, but then I've met something like 30 or 40,000 game developers in my career. So there's reasons why I happen to have that number. It's not just that I'll add everybody.
Right.
If you're enjoying this interview, why not check out this brief trailer from our guest?
There are forces in this world, kitten, that you may never understand. It might be best it stays that way.
Is it hell?
Yes. And more.
I heard Erica, Piper. If she's still alive, I need to know.
If you do it wrong, you try to rush it, shortcut it, well, quickest trail ain't always the safest ride.
Oh, I'm gonna be sick. You walked barefoot in there, like, all the time.
It's not so bad once you get used to it.
Mark! Come on! Down here!
What's this?
The spillways. It'll take us off the streets. Come on.
Won't let go of things making sense.
No, shut up! I'm gonna finish this.
I cannot whistle.
Nonsense. You make an O with your lips and you blow.
I know how it's done. I can't do it.
Let's be work besties in hell. No, Bridget.
But this is a whole different mindset. Now, for me, I'm finding that actually the social media usage is almost like irrelevant for audience generation. Is that fair?
It's much better for audience retention and connecting with other creators, similar to how you talked about LinkedIn for other game developers, which I use LinkedIn extensively as I'm a engineering director at NBC Universal. That's my day job.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of people that want to talk to me about, open roles that I need filled, so on and so forth. But what social media has done for me is it allowed me to find entry into the audio drama creator community, which is one that I've embraced and I think has embraced me pretty well. And what that community provides is not only like a sounding board and support network for the creation of shows, but also like the connections that you need to grow a show as well. A lot of the ways that people discover audio first fiction in the first place is not through reading articles or reading lists on social media or anything of that sort. It's by hearing the recommendations of shows that they enjoy, and the media that they are already consuming that puts a new show in front of them. And that can be a very tough nut to crack, especially as somebody coming into it without first inundating themselves in that space in the first, to kick things off.
And to be fair, that's kind of the point of why I'm doing this, because, I mean, first and foremost, I just happen to love talking to people about what they do and how they do it because I want to learn. But secondly, if I can create a space where we have a community of people who do this on a regular basis, as things change, I can find out about it, but also we can talk about each other's stuff, which to me is the most interesting. And I'm lucky that I got to know some folks involved in Fable and Folly, and got to have my podcast added to that list. I'm still really early, so I have zero audience for that at the moment. But, I think you've got to be in it for a period of time. And my head says 2 years before I'm expecting to see an audience. Is that fair judgment?
I mean, yeah. Some shows never find their audience, and that can be very frustrating. But that doesn't... It's not necessarily a reflection on your quality as a storyteller. I think more... importantly, or just a podcaster in general, for that matter, because a lot of factors, again, go into that. Sometimes you just have to find a different story to tell. Sometimes you just have to wait for the audience to find you. And a lot of folks I know have gotten into this, produced 4 episodes. They're not immediately like gaining traction, and they hang up their hat and walk away. Yeah. And it's a shame because I hate seeing less stories being told, and there's value in every story, and that's something that I personally like. I try to be as big of a supporter of people in this space as I can. I ran a show called Podmesh that was specifically about people talking about and promoting shows that they love, mainly coming from other creators, and I donate to literally every Kickstarter campaign that I come across for audio drama because I want to see these stories get made. You have to like believe in the process, I think, as part of gaining the traction that you're seeking. And doing a show like this, I think, is 100% believing in the process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I think maybe I'm lucky because I come from the game scene.
Right.
Things like Kickstarter is very familiar. I've run 2 Kickstarters myself. Mm-hmm. We ran one based on the Rocky Horror Show, building a mobile game for the Rocky Horror Show because we had the license for that, which is really cool. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to make the game work, but that's life.
Yeah.
I also ran one based on an old choose your own adventure style book called Lone Wolf, which the author Joe Dever is an old friend of mine, and he passed in 2016, and his son and others decided to sort of try to make a game. But this is crazy. We were trying to do an AR location-based experience with a choose-your-own-adventure. I mean, talk about niche audience, and a free-to-play one at that.
Sure.
Honestly, we knew it was never going to work, but it was worth a punt.
But sometimes, and I hate to interrupt you here, Oscar, but sometimes those stories that you know aren't going to work are the best ones to tell. They are. Like,
honestly,
you can really get to the heart of something that just would otherwise go unexplored. And I think that exploration in a lot of ways is reward in itself.
100%. So let's go back to the kind of, so you paid for the actors to participate. Obviously, you've got your material, your sunk cost of the facilities and the tools that you've got. And at the end of the day, we aren't talking about necessarily the most lucrative of ventures.
No.
How do you finance that?
I mean, as aforementioned, I have a job that affords me the ability to have a very expensive second career. I would be ecstatic if Heartglass made back the money I put into it, which is approaching like $12,000 at this point.
Yeah.
But part of my own personal philosophy, I don't know if you've been able to define or not, is that I am very much a believer in like social benefit. And so if I'm asking people to work on something that I'm producing and I have the means to do so, I'm going to pay for it. I don't care how small the contribution is, how little that it impacts. If you're going to work on bringing my vision to life, you need to be paid for it. So could I have made the show for less? Almost certainly. Will I ever see the money back from this? Maybe, but unlikely. I would have to be incredibly lucky in order to do so. Part of it is just, I could have written a novel. I could have, shot an indie film. There are other ways that I could have done this. The way that I chose to approach this, I think, is because of the very nature of the media that's there. The nice thing about audio drama that you don't get through other medium is that you get a granularity to, like, the levers you have to pull are limited enough to force you to be creative, but expansive enough that you can tell some really wild stories. And that's what appeals to me so much about any kind of audio medium. And I think that's true for like APs too. I don't think APs are limited just to like 5 people sitting around a table talking into microphones, telling crass jokes. Like What's in the Rift, the AP that I produced was very heavily sound designed, was very much like an immersive style experience. And I think there's something to be said for that. Like, respecting the media that you're choosing to present your story is a big part about what helps you garner an audience as well. Even the most lightly produced shows still recognize that they are audio first and embrace that.
Exactly. In fact, the design I'm taking is, mine's a conversation. Mine's about 4 people arguing.
Sure.
And that's why I do that deliberately, because it creates an initially immensely constrained moment and a finite time limit, and I have less work to do in terms of audio sound.
Sure. I mean, I read your concept for that, and I absolutely love it, by the way, Oscar. Like, it's
Thank you.
It's very intriguing and kind of gets to the core of what I like about actual plays. Just to take a deviation into actual plays, What's in the Rift was a system based on a system by Cam Banks called Cortex Prime. And Cortex Prime is a nice system because it's modular enough that it can allow you to tailor it to the type of story that you want to tell. And What's in the Rift was very much a story that was not about like swinging big swords or firing loud guns. It was about pulling apart layers of a mystery and getting to navigate some very difficult social situations where not all parties had all the information at their disposal in order to do that effectively. Which is the kind of story that I like to tell. So it all fit in. I think that's part of it is just like you learn to embrace a unique way to tell a story. And I love your concept for an AP because it's not one that I'd heard before. And it's also just all the things I love about APs, which are the like, let's swing a sword moments.
Yeah, and the joy of it is I don't end up needing to roll dice, all that kind of stuff. But the irony is, I designed this in '92.
Really?
I was taking this around game conventions like Gen Con, but we had a UK Gen Con.
Yeah.
Back in those days. That's long gone, sadly. But I was taking it around shows like that, and I was just trying to find a way to be able to have people play a game and have lots of people being able to play that game. So it had to be short.
Yeah.
And I think this is the sort of fun part, is that, at heart I'm a designer, but I'm also somebody who wants to tell stories. It sounds like you're a storyteller, and you found a way to be able to do that, and with the best graphics card there is.
That's right.
The imagination.
That's perfect. Perfect way to put it. Yes.
So, what's that last thing, that one thing you would say to somebody who wanted to start out doing this kind of stuff, whether it was audio drama or actual play? What do you think is the one thing that they should do to be able to do that effectively?
Start. like that. There's really no secret to it. Everybody wants I'm just missing this and then I can do it. But the reality is that until you start doing it, you won't. It's if it exists forever as a potential, then you never get to fully explore what it could be. And so even if it's bad, even if it's something that, isn't up to the measure of the media that you want it to be like, they didn't start there either. So it's imperative that you just start. That you
How do you learn if you don't start?
You have to dive headfirst into it and embrace it fully.
I think in my case, the reason that I put off starting this so long is because I felt like I needed to have professional actors and pay them, and I just was never going to be in the situation where I could afford it. And then my friends basically said to me, "No, we'll do it. Let's do it."
Right.
And I just love that, and they keep me at it, and the fact that it's become a joyful experience where I'm being able to bring so many more people into it has been really helpful. Anyway, so thank you very much, Josh. This has been fantastic. So if people want to find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can check out the new show at https://heart.glass or find me on social media at maninjumpsuit.com.
Fantastic. So there you have it. We have Josh has been talking to us about both creating actual play experiences, but also creating narrative storytelling through audio, and the kind of the way that these things both feed off each other and also tell stories in very different and more incisive ways. What I think's also been really interesting to me is that we can have a political opinion, we can have a position we're starting from, and that, whatever that is for you, that's going to form part of your identity. And if you're not expressing some part of your identity in the narratives and the experiences you're doing, you're missing out on a massive part of what makes your storytelling compelling and interesting to an audience. So I think us having that understanding, having that sense of God, that we can create art. We are entitled to create art. No matter what we think art is, we are entitled to do that. And that's part of the joy of this experience. And this may not be the most kind of profitable place where we're all going to suddenly become Hollywood stars. This is the place where we can tell our stories. We can tell our stories with our friends, with professional actors, and most importantly, with a community of people who love the stories we tell. I hope you've liked that. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, please like, subscribe, follow all the usual stuff, find out more about what we're doing, and we'll be back again when we talk to somebody else who's making amazing audio stories, whether that's actual plays or audio narratives. Thank you very much for joining. Josh, thanks once more.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
This has been your podcast.
All right.